In a quiet village of ancient China lived a scholar known as Gleam of Day, a young man whose round face and high forehead bespoke the keen intelligence of a devoted student of letters. One warm afternoon, as the summer cicadas droned beyond his window, he lay down upon his bed and drifted into a deep and dreamless sleep, unaware that an extraordinary fate was about to knock upon his door. Without warning, a figure materialized beside his bed, a man in formal court attire, standing patiently as though he had been waiting for some time. Gleam of Day started awake and pushed himself upright, blinking in confusion. The stranger bowed with practiced grace. "The prince," he announced, "is asking for you." "Which prince?" the scholar demanded. "The prince of the neighboring territory," came the reply. Grumbling under his breath at the mystery of it all, Gleam of Day rose from his bed, donned his finest court robes, and followed his enigmatic guide into the outside world. To his astonishment, a grand palanquin awaited him, borne by silent bearers. They set off at a remarkable pace, and soon the scholar found himself passing through a wonderland of innumerable pavilions and soaring towers crowned with elegant pointed roofs. The retinue swept onward through this dreamlike landscape, past gardens bursting with strange and fragrant blossoms, along avenues lined with carved stone lanterns. The architecture grew ever more magnificent, each building more elaborate than the last, with upturned eaves and vermilion pillars gleaming in the soft golden light. Gleam of Day peered from the curtains of his palanquin, marveling at a world he had never seen, wondering what kingdom lay ahead. At last the procession halted in the sweeping courtyard of a vast palace. Young women in brilliantly colored garments gathered along the colonnades, whispering to one another and gazing with frank curiosity at the newcomer. Attendants announced his arrival with great ceremony, their voices echoing across the marble flagstones. Gleam of Day stepped down from the palanquin, smoothing his robes, acutely aware of the dozens of bright eyes studying his every move. He was led through gilded doors into the grand audience hall, where the prince sat upon an ornate throne. At the sight of his guest, the prince descended the steps and welcomed Gleam of Day with all the formality prescribed by ancient rites. "You perfume this neighborhood," the prince said kindly. "Your reputation has reached me, and I wish to make your acquaintance." Servants brought jars of fragrant wine, and the two men began to converse. Their conversation flowed nobly and brilliantly, ranging across poetry, philosophy, and the affairs of the world. The prince was a man of refined sensibilities, and Gleam of Day matched him wit for wit as wine warmed his tongue. At length the prince leaned forward with a more personal question. "Among all the flowers of the world," he asked, "tell me, which one do you prefer above all others?" "The Nelumbo," Gleam of Day replied without a moment of hesitation, for its purity rising unstained from murky waters, its grace upon the summer breeze. The prince clapped his hands together in astonishment. "The Nelumbo?" he exclaimed. "Why, that is precisely my daughter's surname. What an extraordinary coincidence. The princess must absolutely know you." He signaled to an attendant, who bowed and slipped quickly from the hall on some secret errand. A few minutes later, the great doors parted, and the princess appeared. She was between 16 and 17 years of age, and nothing in all the world could equal her admirable beauty. Her skin was like porcelain beneath a cascade of dark hair. Her eyes held the quiet depth of still water, and she moved with the effortless grace of a blossom swaying upon its stem. Her father ordered her to bow to the scholar and presented her. "Here is my daughter Nelumbo." Gleam of Day looked upon her and felt his soul troubled to its very foundations. A great warmth flooded his chest, his thoughts scattered like leaves in a storm. The prince spoke again, but the scholar hardly heard, stammering replies with an awkwardness that mortified him even as the words left his lips. When at last the princess withdrew, glancing back once with a look the scholar could not decipher, the conversation between the two men languished. Words that had flowed so easily now came haltingly, thin and forced. The prince sensed the change and eventually rose from his seat, bringing the interview to a gracious close. Gleam of Day bowed deeply, cursing himself silently for a fool who could not string two coherent sentences together. During the entire journey home, the young man writhed with twin shames, his overwhelming emotion before the girl and his unforgivable rudeness toward his royal host. He replayed every stuttered word, every blank stare, groaning aloud in his palanquin. Yet beneath the shame, something else burned steadily, an image he could not banish. Those deep, quiet eyes, that cascade of dark hair, the grace of a flower upon its stem. In the days that followed, a second summons arrived, and then a third. Each visit drew the scholar deeper into the life of the palace. He and Princess Nelumbo walked together in gardens of impossible beauty, speaking of poetry and the stars. Her laughter, light and musical, chased away his awkwardness, and soon he found he could speak freely in her presence. The prince watched with quiet approval, and one evening proposed a marriage. The wedding was celebrated with feasts and music that echoed through the dreamlike kingdom for days on end. Gleam of Day felt himself the luckiest of men, wedded to a woman of peerless beauty and gentle wisdom. They lived in a pavilion surrounded by lotus ponds, where the fragrance of blossoms drifted through every window. For a time, happiness so perfect seemed almost fragile, as though it belonged to a world that might dissolve at any moment. Then one morning, a messenger burst into the palace, pale with terror. A great serpent had been seen slithering toward the kingdom from the east, its body thick as a pillar, its jaws wide enough to swallow a man. The prince begged his son-in-law for help. Gleam of Day seized a sword and rushed to the gates, but the creature was enormous beyond imagining. He swung his blade, the serpent lunged, and everything went black. Gleam of Day woke in his own bed, heart pounding, the afternoon light unchanged. Driven by an inexplicable unease, he went to his neighbor's garden wall and discovered a beehive in ruins, a dead snake coiled nearby, the bees scattered and dying. With gentle hands, he rebuilt the hive and coaxed the survivors home. This tale from Liaozhai reminds us that love and duty transcend the bounds of dreams, and that even the humblest creatures deserve our compassion.